to Glory Podcast. Dak is in a red shirt again. That's 2 episodes in a row. Austin and I are not. What the hell's going on?
This one's maroon.
Nebraska fan.
This is not Husker red. This is maroon.
Garth Brooks.
I don't know. That looks pretty red to me.
No, that is 100% maroon.
Where's your fan in the background at this time?
Well, oh no, I'm in a hotel this time.
Oh,
Been living out of city for a while.
look at you, hardworking man. All right. Well, this is going to be a little bit more of a fun episode. We are going to talk some Husker football. We're going to start by going through just the new college football format, landscape, conferences, playoffs. And then we're all going to give some bold predictions. And I told these guys they need to be bold. We're not doing stuff that's like 50-50. Like, this stuff is probably not going to happen, but they're going to be bold. Some Husker related, some more national related. So have a little fun with that later on. Before we get started with any of that, first want to mention, people probably have heard, but Teddy Prochazka hurt his knee. He was in the running, it sounded like, if not maybe the starter at left tackle for an offensive line that probably is already thin. Turner Corcoran now is back full time, I think, at that left tackle spot if he can stay healthy as well. He's coming off his injury from last year. Real quick, I first off, feel bad for Teddy. I think he's tore both of his ACLs or both of his knees up. He had shoulder problems last year. You just can't seem to stay healthy. I wouldn't say it's a devastating or huge blow for the team, but it's obviously not good.
Yeah,
Really bad for your depth. That's for sure.
if it's gonna happen, you probably prefer it happens at the beginning of fall camp, so you have fall camp to figure it out and maybe try to beef up one of your backups a little bit better, but not great. But I mean, he's been hurt every year he's played. I don't even know if he played all of last year, did he?
I think he got a little bit of time. His backup is a true freshman, I think, in Gunnar Gatula. So it's not, for a depth reasoning, it's not great. And it's going to be a group that has to do a good job of protecting Dylan back there at quarterback. So not good news, I guess, this week. But like you said, at least there's time here before we kick off the season to build some continuity with that group before we hit UTEP. Guys, we are 2 weeks from this upcoming Saturday is week 0.
That's wild.
Can't wait.
That week 0 slate, though.
Awful. That is one of the that's one of the worst slates of football I've ever saw, but I don't care. I could literally watch kids play football in the yard and I'd be happy. I don't care.
Kids just play football in the yard. Do we need to get a restraining order filed on you?
Okay, I didn't mean like that. Jesus.
All right, let's jump into this whole new college football world that we are living in, at least for 2024. Most people are probably familiar with it. Conferences, first off, look way different. The Big 10 added 4 schools. We're at 18 schools. The SEC's up to 16, adding Oklahoma and Texas. The Big 12, I believe, is up to 16 or 18. They added a handful of teams to their conference. The Pac-12 is down to the Pac-2, and apparently they still have some sort of an alliance right now. Just a lot of moving parts into something that I don't know if we're done, but we seem like we're at a spot, at least for this season, that there's not going to be any more moving parts. Notre Dame, I think, is the big one that nobody really knows where they're going to go, if they're going to go anywhere, if they need to go. But I guess first off, let me ask you, Austin, what do you think this means for college football for this year and the impact of the sport, but then also in the future?
just regarding conference realignment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a shift towards more of a pro style system. Like it's players are going to start getting paid. There's going to be player contracts. There's probably going to be a salary cap at some point. Obviously, that's not going to impact this year. This year, you're just going to see the big shakeup probably in the Big Ten. I don't really think the SEC top dogs are going to be the same SEC top dogs.
Whoa. I don't know about that.
I feel pretty good about that, Dak. Excluding Texas, of course. That must be who you're referring
Yeah.
to. The Big Ten, though, you have Oregon and USC, which I think could cause it to be a little bit spicier than it's been in the past. Probably won't be, the Michigan Ohio State Big Ten championship game, if I had to guess.
Yeah. I think this will only last max 2-3 years like it is right now. It's gonna move, it's gonna all shift up again. I think the ACC will go away. And then I think it's just gonna be the Big 12, Big 10, SEC basically. And then Notre Dame, they'll probably stay independent if I had to guess. I don't think they'll ever join a conference.
Why? They don't need to. They make so much money on their own.
Yeah, they have the MEC contract. They'll never leave that.
Yeah.
Now, the only way they might is if these conferences start forming their own leagues. And we've talked about that a lot in the past couple of years as these teams have been signing these deals. Forgot to mention the ACC. So, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Dak, too. I think they have, I don't know, what are they up to? 16 as well, I think. So it does.
It's all dependent on the sport, too. I mean, we're talking specifically through the football lens, but it's a whole different game when you start talking about basketball and their conferences.
Here's the one thing to me that I don't think people are talking about enough, and it's going to shock a lot of people, especially in, for sure, the ACC and the Big 12, maybe even the Big 10 and SEC. There's no divisions anymore. So I've heard this on a few other podcasts, but there's potential for a lot of ties at the top. And typically in the past, the tiebreaker rules are pretty easy, right? You look at conference record, then you look at division record, then you have head-to-head. I guess head-to-head's first. But now you're going to have maybe 3 teams with 1 or 2 losses at the top who maybe 2 of them have played each other, but another one hasn't. So I don't know that these conferences have a bunch of tiebreaker rules set in place yet. Maybe they do, but it's going to get pretty complicated. And there's going to be a lot of people complaining if I'm just throwing out the Big Ten, for example, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State all with 2 losses at the top. I'll throw a 4th one in there. Like, who gets to play in the conference title game? There's no more divisions. And that allows a team, Iowa, who has a cake schedule again this year. Every fucking year they have a cake schedule. Like, if they go in with 2 losses, they're in the argument too, but they don't play any of the top teams. Like, I just think that's going to be an issue that nobody's really foreseeing because we haven't thought that far ahead or haven't experienced it. But it could happen in all 4 conferences if there's not any like powerhouse top teams.
It'll hit fast if they don't have any tiebreakers ready. Because you got to think, one of these conferences that there's going to be at least 3 teams that tie at one of these conferences.
And then let me ask you this. Let's say you have 3 2-loss teams at the top. Your winner's going to get into the playoff by the automatic bid. Now, are you putting in the conference loser, or are you putting in that 3rd team with 2 losses, or are you putting in the 9-3 team? Or
it's going to be a mess.
It's going to get messy when it gets to the rankings, and like it'll be very telling for the committee, like who is sitting around that 7 through 15 spot in the rankings week after week and what kind of teams those are. I mean, this is conference only, but the playoff, the new structure, top 4, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the top 4 are automatic bids. If I think the highest from the Power 4 and a group of 5, the 4 highest seeds. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the Power 4 conferences. People are kind of assuming that, but let's just say the Big 12 beats everybody up, and a team like Tulane goes 11-1 and is ranked 8th. Tulane's getting in at that 4 spot. So you have the buys, then you have the other 4 games that are going to be at home sites. I could see that being a cause of an issue, but I also think it's going to be fun as hell for those home site games. I mean, can you imagine?
Home site games are going to rule.
Oh man,
Which
playoff games at home and for college football that has never happened before.
Which back to Notre Dame, I forgot about this. This might force them to join the conference. They cannot get a home game right now in this format. Like it's impossible for them to get a playoff home game.
They can get a home game. They
can't get a
semi. Get a bye.
Yeah, they can't get.
Oh yeah, bye. Yep.
Because they're never going to be one of those 5 conference automatic bids, but they could be a 5 through 8 seed.
And that'll make them join quick.
Yeah. Dak's he's coming off this year with a lot of great takes. Dak, you are off to a roll here. 4 episodes in.
Well, it's all that studying I've been telling you I'm doing.
Uh-huh. So this playoff format, 12 teams. Where do we see the flaws at? We talked a little bit about that already, but where are people going to pick holes in it? I think there's a lot of good to it. I also am under the belief it's not going to be around here for a long time. So where's it going to go wrong?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think having 12 teams gives the committee a decent leeway. Like, people aren't like last year when Florida State got left out, which I agree was bullshit. With 12 teams, it's a lot harder to be like, well, I don't know. Like Utah, they were the 13th best team. Like, they're that 13 seed. I think they should have gotten over LSU. Like obviously there's going to be that discourse, but I think when you get 12 out, it's not like a clear, like, hey, this team was undefeated and got left out of the playoffs. Like that's not going to happen. It's going to be a 2 or 3 loss team that might get in. But as far as flaws, it really comes down to the committee and how, is the SEC bias going to be real? I have no idea.
Yeah, Dak, I mean, add to that, but how many SEC teams do you think are going to get in?
On a normal year, 4 or 5 minimum. Because I don't like the SEC. I hate we joined it. But there is a bias by them. And
ESPN owns the TV rights to the playoffs. They also own
they're gonna
rights to the SEC. It's
there's a big bias behind it. A lot of money. But going back to what you said about staying, how long is it going to stay? They've already tried to get 16 teams in before this even happened. Like they tried last year to get to 16 before we even kicked off the 12-team playoff. So it won't be long before it's 16.
And my opinion on all of it, I really don't care how many teams are in. The more football, the better, right? The longer we can make college football season, like I'm happier. The biggest flaw, or I think what's going to be the biggest problem, is going to be the debate of
championship games.
I think those are going to be straightforward, right? The champion gets in, kind of what I mentioned earlier. Does
right, but the loser of the championship games.
But I think the SEC, like right now, the consensus is going to be the SEC championship losers in, no matter what. I would say the Big Ten's almost in. So like people are going to make that argument. Then you're going to say, okay, does a third get in? Does a fourth get in? Well, once you start getting to those 3-loss teams that are coming from the SEC, the Big Ten, you're going to compare them with the 2-loss ACC and the 2-loss Big 12, and then you're going to compare them with all the 2 and 1 loss non-power. I mean, there's going to be 15 teams in that conversation that we haven't paid much attention to in the rankings in the past because all we've been focused on is the top 7, 8. People are going to pay very close attention to spots 9 through 20.
So here's last year's. Here's where the AP top 25 ended last year.
Don't look at the playoff top 25, not the AP. They're different. The playoff committee's top 25 is what the top 25 is. So before you do that, I will say that because people have asked about that, like who decides who gets in, like what rankings decide. I'm like, no, the playoff committee has their own rankings, and those are the rankings that get used. I think they come out like week 8 or so. Around that time, those get used on TV and all the media from then on. The AP and the coaches poll are just used basically up until that point. Then the committee of, I don't even know how many are on it. I should know that, but I don't. The committee is the one that ranks these teams, how they feel, and then who ultimately decides to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, the AP and coach poll are basically just preseason hype polls. That's all it is. They don't matter one bit.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so here's last year. So obviously you had the four: Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama, Florida State, Georgia, Ohio State. Oregon was the first two-loss team. Missouri 2-loss, Penn State 2-loss, Ole Miss 2-loss, Oklahoma 2-loss. So that's the top 12. And then it drops to your first 3-loss team, which would be LSU, Arizona, Louisville, Notre Dame, Iowa, NC State. Oregon State lost 4 games. Oklahoma State lost 4 games. Tennessee
So
lost
where's
four.
you don't have to go through the whole list, but where is the first non-power 4 school in there?
Let me think.
probably Notre Dame.
Well, so ACC, yeah, it would be Notre Dame.
So who's next?
Notre Dame, NC State, they're ACC, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oregon State at number 19.
I mean, they technically would be. This
They're
year.
not Power 5, they're Power 4. You said
Right.
Power 4.
Right.
I don't even know what they are.
Then Liberty's at 23. SMU's in the Big 12, right? So it's just
They are
Liberty,
this year.
Oregon State, and Notre Dame are the only 3 non-Power 4 schools.
So
Yeah, last year it would have been Liberty.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. So they would have been the one that would have got in under that criteria. So you would have got one of those in. In years past, I think we've seen teams like Toledo, Tulane. I'm trying to think of other, just SMU was one of those. Boise State,
James Madison last
James
year.
Madison, that have creeped in the top 20, like 15 in that range.
Tulane beat USC.
Thanks for calling that
Yeah.
out. So there's a lot of potential there. But what that tells us right there from last year is they are favoring the power conference 2, 3, 4-loss type teams over some of these 1 and 2 loss.
Right.
Lower.
Liberty was 23 and they were 13-0.
Yep. So there you go. So that to me is going to be interesting how they play that out. Are they going to how are they going to do it? So anyways, any other thoughts, I guess, right now? We're obviously going to continue this conversation much into the season.
The rankings.
So it'll be fun. Like, people need to enjoy it and not bitch about it. That's my biggest thing. Don't
It's
shut
not
it
going to
down.
be perfect.
It's never going to be perfect. Enjoy that we have more football. I think playoff games are awesome. Like, I hope someone like Wyoming can pull off like a 12-0 season and host a home game in Laramie in the snow. Oh my God. Like, think how awesome that would be if a team
That'd be
like
sweet.
a team like
game.
a team like USC or a team like, let's say, Oklahoma has a good year and they got to go to Laramie to play. Like, that'd be so awesome.
Those home games are going to be awesome. I wish they would move them out of the middle of the winter, but that's all right. I guess they'll be all right.
That's part of it, man.
Can you imagine a middle January game in Lincoln?
It would be sweet.
Or picture like Texas having to go play Ohio State as like the 11-6 game, go to Columbus. Like, oh, it's gonna be great.
10 degrees.
All right. Second part here. Let's move on to our bold prediction. So I told these guys they got to be bold, less than 5% chance of happening. You can do it however you want. It can be a game outcome. It can be a player outcome. It can be a scenario that plays out. We're going to stay specific to one Nebraska related bold prediction and then one college football related prediction. But this should spark some conversation. So I want people to challenge. I want us to challenge why they won't happen. But you got to stick by your guns and think why it will. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to be relying on you guys to determine if it's truly bold. I was trying to figure out what's the
Austin. You were the one I was worried about. Like, you're not. I want you to dig deep. Like,
I know. I think I got a decent one for the Huskers, but when it comes to the The
Well, let's start
national.
college football since we've just been talking about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Austin. We'll see it. We'll see how you do.
All right. So my bold one is a team that is currently not ranked in the preseason coaches top 25 will make the semifinals. Is that bold enough? They'll end up finishing as a top 4 team.
Yeah, that's pretty bold.
That's bold. I want you to add to it and give me like a list of like 3 teams that you think it could be.
I think Washington, Auburn. I think, there's that world where Wisconsin maybe has a frisky little year, ends up top 12, and they sneak in there. Obviously, Nebraska and Colorado are both worthy. I'm just kidding. No, that's not happening. But I do think, honestly, like Washington might not have as big of a dip as people think. Louisville kind of came on last year.
I like Louisville out of the teams you mentioned so far.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Washington could have a really dud year. Losing.
There's another purple team.
Yep. Wisconsin.
K-State.
Who knows? K-State's ranked at like 15th or something.
I mean,
okay,
I don't
take
think
that
it's
back then. You didn't hear me there.
Honestly, any of the ACC teams could win the ACC. All of a sudden, they're in the game. They're in the tournament. The playoffs?
The playoffs.
I guess. I don't want to say tournament. That feels like too basketball-y. But they're in the playoffs, and then if you just win a couple games, all of a sudden in your top 4.
Kansas is ranked, right?
Oh,
Kansas is 24.
Okay. Because I can see them making a run. God, I don't know about top 4. That's because you're gonna have to win. You're unranked.
You're gonna win 2 playoff games.
Yeah, God, I don't know about that. Wisconsin was the only one that you said that I could maybe see it. It all depends on Van Dyke.
You just have to make it to the top 12, and then all you have to do is win 2 games.
Van Dyke
at a top 5 stadium.
Yeah.
Okay, Dak. Hit me with yours.
All right. I actually 100% believe this one. All right. USC will go 5-7 and Lincoln Riley will be fired at the end of the year.
Wow, that is a spicy take.
I don't know about the 5-7. I think he's going to get fired at the end of the year. He's not a good coach. I've been saying this. I never said he was out of Oklahoma, but I've said it now.
He has to have such a bad losing season to get fired. Like
I think he's on the hot seat right now a little bit.
I don't think he is.
Do you think that's less than 5%?
That he gets fired?
I think it's less than 10%.
I don't know. So their win total right now is sitting at 7.5.
Look at the QB talent this dude's had. And what did he do last year?
I will say if he goes 5-7, he's probably gone. I wouldn't. That's probably not a bad take.
Would you agree that he's already on the hot seat a little bit?
I think so.
It's probably.
I wouldn't say he's like on the edge of like I can't name it. Who's a coach? I don't know. He's not like a one semi-bad losing season from getting fired. But
no, I don't think he's there. I mean,
if it all falls apart, you got to look at this dude's track record though. He can never get a defense at all. He's had the best QB talent I think ever a coach has had.
Yeah, the only reason why I say
8-5 year 2.
The only reason why I say that might not be under 10%. Like I don't know that this USC team is like getting talked about like the top 3 teams in the Big Ten. I think they're the one like coming into the Big Ten that people think might really struggle because of what you said. And they don't have a defense. I agree that if they go 5-7, he's fired. But I'm going 5-7 to me is like not likely, but it's probable for a team like USC coming in.
I mean, their preseason rank in the coaches poll is 23rd.
Yeah,
that's pretty low.
So they are ranked.
They're ranked 23 preseason coach.
I mean, shit. How many number 1 picks has this dude had?
That's why I don't think he'll get fired. I think
you got to win. You got to win eventually, or find a way to get a defense. For the love of God, Texas Tech has found a way to get a better defense than he can ever find.
I feel like
That's good.
that's,
But maybe in the Big Ten, you won't need as good of one with some of these offenses.
He won't. Like that's just true. He won't. but I don't know.
I mean,
And this is not hate at all. I like the guy.
this is hate. Don't even. Push the bullshit. All right, so they start week 1 against LSU, and then
Oh, they're
week 2
getting
they
fucked.
play at Michigan,
Loss.
followed by Wisconsin,
Loss.
Minnesota, Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, Washington, Nebraska, UCLA, end the year with Notre Dame.
Yeah, they might go 5-7. They might.
You
That might
might
not
not
be
be bold
crazy.
enough. You might need to lower that to 4-8 or even 3-9.
That was without looking at their schedule. I don't think that was a bold take right there. They might actually go 5-7. That's a hard ass schedule.
It is actually really hard because I mean Utah State's not terrible.
No.
Wisconsin, Minnesota, Maryland, Rutgers, Washington.
I mean, let's
Nebraska.
be real. What games are those going to come down to? Nebraska, Minnesota, and Wisconsin are going to be your
And then UCLA probably.
UCLA, your quote unquote toss up games. That if they win
Yep.
those, they could be 7-5. They lose them, they could be 4-7 or 5-8 or 4-8.
They could have 3 wins. That's not no joke. They could. With that schedule, they could easily have 3 wins.
But the schedule also offers him opportunities to have a big win, which goes a long way in retaining a coach. Like if he goes out there and he ends the year beating, a number 3 ranked Notre Dame, or he beats Michigan week 3 before they find out that they're bad and it's a big game.
Yeah, I don't.
We
That's
spent
bad.
way too much time talking about USC.
No hate. No hate.
No hate. You're so full of shit.
My bold prediction, and I tried to set it up a little bit with our playoff discussion. This is what I think is going to happen this year. I think all these conferences I briefly mentioned are going to beat each other up. The only one that I don't think it could happen to is the SEC, maybe the Big Ten. I think the Big 12 is going to have 4 teams with 3
With 2
losses.
losses.
Or
Yeah.
I'm even going to say 3 losses at the top. I think the ACC is in the same boat. So my prediction is that the winner, obviously, of those get in. But then I think 4 non-Power 4 schools are getting into the playoffs this year, 4 of the 12. Now,
Wow.
one of those is an automatic
Notre
bid,
Dame.
and then the other is Notre Dame.
Okay, so we're looking
But-
at 2.
The next teams, here's
Or Oregon
I
State.
started looking at win totals. Now I don't even think Oregon State, Washington State are either one of those.
Okay.
The highest, tied for the highest win total in the country, is Liberty at 10.5. So Liberty goes 11-1. They're in. I don't know where they're at in the rankings, but they're in.
They
Is their
are
QB back?
Malik. Can't remember.
I thought
his
his-
or
I
who
don't
is
know
it?
what his name is, but he was. I thought he left. So that's insane. If they're at
No,
10.5.
I think they're one to get in. I think Boise State has a chance to run the Mountain West and get in. Their win total is 9.5. Appalachian State's at 8.5. Texas State, Toledo, UTSA, JMU. They're all 8.5 win totals. It just takes a
Air
couple of
Force, James Madison, Miami, Ohio.
JMU. Air Force is 6.5. Here's what I think could happen is a lot of these schools could have 2 losses, and if there are a lot of 3 and 4 loss teams from these other conferences, I think the committee for this first year might say, let's throw in some of these smaller teams so they can get their ass kicked, and that way nobody's going to bitch about it next year, and we can go back to put 1 in. Now, I don't know if that's bold, but getting 4 in, nobody's going to expect 4 of these. Nobody's going to expect Liberty, Boise State, and App State all to get in. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that it could happen, because I do think nobody's going to expect all these conferences to beat each other up. The ACC and the Big 12 right now, they are so evenly balanced. The ACC doesn't have Clemson and Florida State are decent, right? But like they're not top heavy like they used to be. Even the SEC, I think Georgia's going to get in, right? As long as they don't lose 3 or 4 games, but
Alabama should.
they could beat each other up. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon. You add teams
think
like
the-
US. They could all happen. Like everybody could have
biggest
3 or 4
counter-
losses.
So the biggest counter to that though is it comes down to a committee selection. And I think they're gonna really favor like, hey, you lost to Georgia and Texas this year. You're probably and so they're fighting for 12 spots. 5 are already taken. I'm gonna make the assumption Notre Dame's and so you got 6 spots you're working for 3 or for 2 more spots. I think it's gonna be really tough for one of those teams to get in those top 12.
We'll see. That's my
thing-
prediction. 4 of them.
The thing about the playoffs that I like is how much can you really bitch if you have 3 losses, you don't make it? Like Florida State could bitch last year, they were 13-0. How much like
You're not
you
you
lost
can't-
3 games?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the conversation is going to heat up. Okay, Husker prediction. I'll start mine. I actually have 2 written down. I'll go with the one that I actually think will happen. The other one I don't think will, but it was a fun scenario. I'm just going to start by saying before the end of the year, well, we're going to make a bowl game. That's not the bold prediction. Before the end of the year, Dave Aranda will be our new defensive coordinator.
Whoa.
I'll leave it at that.
So you're
Before the
saying
end of the year?
Yep, before the end of the year, he'll be hired as the new
the calendar year or the football season?
football
So,
season year.
Okay, so you're thinking that White's probably gonna get hired after the season ends, and then
No, before the season ends, there'll be a job that opens up. He'll get hired. Before the bowl game, that happens all the time where coordinators take head jobs I'll say this, he could still coach the bowl game, but he will take a job somewhere else.
And Dave Aranda,
Because Dave Aranda is going to get fired from Baylor before the end of the year.
and he was Rules DC when he was down there.
I don't know that for sure. I should have looked that up before making this take, but I know they
Yeah, he
have
was.
connections. I know they
I
have very
think.
strong connections. Dave Aranda was at LSU for a while with Les Miles. So
I'm pretty sure he was Rules DC.
I'm looking it up.
Man, that's a hot ass take. I don't. You have to have 2 things happen there.
you want to talk about a bold prediction? But I'm
You have to have
I'm
2
calling
things
it.
happen there. I guess I have 2 things in mind too, but
Doesn't look like he ever overlapped with the rule.
I think he took over right after.
Fired.
He took over right after him, but I didn't know if he was on the staff
Yep.
prior.
All right, someone else jump in. Give me your take.
All right. This one I feel is pretty bold. This is a pretty spicy one. By the end of the year, speaking of collective units on the Husker team, the best unit is going to be the offensive line.
Wow.
Excluding quarterback play because that's a one position unit. But I think as a collective unit at the end of the year, it's going to be the offensive line. We're going to be like, wow, the offensive line really carried this team this year.
God, I hope you're right, because that means we had a damn good year.
Yeah, that means you guys are gonna have one hell of a year if that happens. Good.
I mean,
I
that's,
don't see any
We
way.
made big progress last year.
less
Bryce
than
Benhart
10%.
was Bryce Benhart was all Big Ten. We thought he was a freaking stick in the mud prior. Another year under Dom.
Your blindside's already screwed though.
yeah. Did you make that before or after we found out the Teddy
I made
news?
it after.
Hmm.
That's bold.
I mean,
I
it
like
surprised
it.
you guys last year. It was a lot better than you thought last year.
It was
couldn't
way
have got
better than we
worse.
thought it was last year.
It
The
could
whole
not
rest-
have gotten worse.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
the whole
true.
year. Last year was actually pretty good.
It wasn't
Like-
bad.
It
The
was a
defense
5 out
were
of 10.
able to stack the box because we couldn't pass the ball. All of our receivers were hurt. All our running backs were hurt. They held up pretty well.
Yeah, I'd say they had a good offensive line year.
I mean, what collective unit? I mean, D line, wide receivers.
Any defensive position.
I don't know if I'd say that.
Last
We'll
year,
see.
you say wide receivers?
I'm talking this year.
Oh,
What unit could claim that title?
Probably corners.
any side of the defense.
I don't know. We'll see.
D line.
That's the
Yeah.
bold. That's bold.
I like it. I liked it. That was bold. That was the definition of bold. Considering we haven't had that in a long time. Dak, hit us with it.
All right, guys, I'm gonna step outside and fight me after this one. All right. Nebraska doesn't make a bowl game and Dylan Raiola transfers after the year.
Wow.
I don't know how much I believe that first part of it. The second part, I think, could easily happen. What QB spots opening up after the year?
Ohio State probably.
Nope. Georgia.
Good point.
Carson Beck's leaving.
I mean, I think if you're gonna make that take, Dak, you got to stick with both.
Okay, yeah, Nebraska doesn't make a bowl game.
Because I will say this too. If we don't make a bowl game, I do think he's leaving. Like,
Yeah,
why would you stay here? I just think that's gonna happen. I don't know, that part's bold, but I mean the part not making a bowl game I think is pretty, or win total 7. I don't know. Dak's both taking a 7.5 win total down to 5 and calling it bold, but
I think they go hand in hand, those two. If you don't make a bowl game, he's gone. If you do, it depends on what you're. I think you got to win 8 games to have him stay.
That's gonna be a
At
tough
least.
look, though. That's gonna be a real tough look. That's the only reason why I don't think he would transfer maybe after year 1. After year 2 in that, it's another rough year. But when you already come to Ohio State and Georgia, and then you jump to Nebraska, and then you jump back to Georgia,
These players don't care anymore.
I think they care a little bit.
so I'm gonna chime in. So this Dak, your take actually ties into my other like scenario that went through my head. And guys, I'm catching myself too, and maybe it's true, and maybe it'll work out fine. But why are we just assuming that Dylan Raiola is going to be this guy? I mean, we've seen glimpses, but so good. Like, here's the scenario that we're Husker fans. We've suffered through a lot recently, and if that suffering just continues, which again, why shouldn't it? That's just what we're used to. Play this scenario out and tell me it's not possible. We start the year. Dylan Raiola is really good, right? We play UTEP, kick the crap out of them. We play Colorado, and we have this quote unquote easier schedule. Dylan Raiola gets gunslinger happy because he thinks he's really, really good and starts throwing picks. Our offensive line gets banged up. We can't block anybody to save our lives. He's starting to get strip sacked. We start turning the ball over because it's what we know how to do. The turnover issue is not fixed. So by the bye week before we play Indiana, let's say whatever our record is, Dylan Raiola now is not good. So everybody's bitching, blah, 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 blah. We throw in Heinrich Haarberg because now Dylan gets benched. So my bold prediction was Dylan gets benched and Heinrich comes out and starts. Now Heine Haarberg comes out, looks really good. We beat Indiana because he's more improved. Then we play Ohio State and we hang around. And now him and Dylan are going back and forth with the job. And they both look okay. And maybe we still make a bowl game and we go 7-5 or 6-6 but Heine is part of the reason why at quarterback, because he did a good job of filling in, and Raiola kind of came down to earth now and is not turning over, but nobody really knows that whole scenario. And then Raiola's gone. That I'm like, why couldn't that happen? Like,
I don't think that's that crazy. I almost put that. I'm not joking to you. I almost put that as my bold take. That Dylan Raiola comes out sucks and they bench him for Heinrich Haarberg. I don't think he's that nuts. He's a true freshman quarterback. You have no clue what he's going to look like.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be out of time, but we can continue this conversation because it's juicy. It's juicy. We'll talk Sunday. Go Big Red.
Here we are.
Boomer Sooner.